Hey everyone, if you remember from a few weeks ago, we did a video on shooting flash on glass and reflective surfaces, and a few of you wanted to see how I edited those shots. So I opened up Capture One, I've got Photoshop ready, and we're gonna go through these shots and show you how I got that final result. Let's get into it. So these are the 3 shots that we did for that bottle shot, for the last shot that we did. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. There's a black piece of acrylic on the bottom and just a scrim in the back that the light is shooting through. I got my gray card on all these cards, so I made sure that the white balance was right. Just added a little bit of contrast, just to, kind of go through the basic general making a raw file into a JPEG, essentially adding a bit of contrast, adding a bit of oomph to the shots. If we click up the clipping, we see that we are clipping, which is what I was trying to do on purpose, especially on this main shot here. If we open up just this shot here, I purposely wanted to clip the background so that I know that for sure it's going to be 255 white. That way, when I go in Photoshop and I can make sure that it's perfectly white, so like that when you're scrolling through Instagram or whatever it is, that background fits with the background, or if you're on a website, whatever it is, that white is going to be pure white, just like on your background. So this way, obviously it's not entirely white because the flash would have needed to be a bit further back in order to diffuse the scrim properly, all white. However, I'm able to kind of make the rest of it white in Photoshop later pretty simply. As long as I don't blow out my products, which I didn't, that's mostly the most important thing. Obviously, there's a bit of leeway. You can always clip a couple highlights here and there. It's not the end of the world. But if you want something that's striking and bright, you have to get it brighter than you think you need to. So yeah, that's the first shot. I'll show you in Photoshop how I put all 3 of these together. So this one here as well, I knew I wanted it to be vertical, but I had more detail in my sensor if I shot it vertically and I expanded the pixels of the background instead. That way I get more detail on the actual product, and the details that I'm adding are just yellow background, so it doesn't really matter. So this way I was able to keep the product as large as possible on my 24mm sensor. We kind of went through, obviously, the lighting and how each of these were shot, so if you haven't seen that, click the link somewhere here, this one. But yeah, that was the main shot. If you see at the bottom here, there's only just a tile. And in the final photo, there's like a wall. So I'll show you a bit how I did that in Photoshop in probably 5 or 10 minutes if you stick around. This is just the 2 shots that we're gonna combine together. It's just the shot here. This one here is gonna be mostly just the bottles, just the actual jars. And the one above is gonna be the tops, just literally just the, where the hard light is hitting the top. I just didn't like how the bottle looked, or how the jars look. I don't know why I keep saying bottle. I preferred how the jars looked with the scrim that was a bit closer down. If you remember from that video, this will make a lot of sense. So I didn't actually show these in the video from last week, but if we go to the next shot, it'll be this one here. So this one was kind of like a redo of one of the shots that I had done previously. It just had a few less props and a few different colors on the shot. We'll get to it in a sec. Essentially, same thing, one general shot, 90mm tilt shift, and I wanted to create little pockets of highlights on all of the products. So that's why I've got my little white reflector here, and I'm kind of just going in on each shot. So this is the main photo, a couple little highlights clipped, but just barely. That's how I keep it on the edge without going over. There's a couple highlights that are clipped here in the Daikon, but I don't think that's too much of an issue. So yeah, so this here, if we look down here, this is where my reflector card is, so that's what the difference is. I'm not using the light to fill in the shadow. I still want the depth of that shadow, but I am using the brighter logo so that we can actually see the logo as the first thing that we look at when we're looking at the image. So same thing, I went through all three jars. So I went the kimchi, the sauerkraut, and the daikon. We're going to combine them together, and that's how we do it. When I'm adding this contrast and this oomph to these shots, there's not a whole lot that gets done in Capture One. Capture One is a great software for grading if you are going to grade your images, but I mostly use it just for tethering and for its reliability. And honestly, the way it renders its ones and zeros is a little bit more pleasing than Lightroom, in my opinion. your mileage may vary, but I feel like if you import the same image to Lightroom and to Capture One, the pictures just look, the colors just look a little bit more pleasing and a little bit more realistic in the Capture One version. So that's my 2 cents. Like I said, your mileage may vary, but I do prefer using Capture One. It's just a better software for me. So in this shot, like I'm saying, I don't do a whole lot to the actual image. Sometimes I'll go through a lot of these tools and I will grade them in a specific way, but because this shot is a commercial shot that's meant to release this new product for them, I don't want it to be skewed green or skewed magenta or skewed warm or cold. I want it to look like it's going to look like when you buy the damn product. So I just want it to look real, essentially. I've got my gray card. I add a bit of contrast. I make it a little bit more vibrant. That's about it. If I have a few colors that I might want to switch out and, you know, make the orange a little bit more red, I can do that, but it's rare that I will. Unless we're doing a creative edit, of course. I think I might have used a little keystone. I did. So I did use some keystoning in this shot because I am looking down at the photo. It's not just a straight and then shifted down. I'm actually physically looking down and I'm correcting that angle in Photoshop, or in Capture One, sorry. So what we did is that, essentially just bringing the jars from the bottom forward again. So like you're looking down at the jar is going to be, it's going to look like it's looking away. So if you in post bring the bottom of that jar forward, we can keep the angle of the camera and the angle of the jar identical. So like that, there's no perspective issues. So that's why if you go back to the jar, there we go. The jars now are straighter, more straight, maybe not the straightest, but definitely a lot straighter than the original shot, which is like this. So, woo! This program is pretty good for that. I think it's always funner or better to get it right not in post. It's better to get it right in camera. You get less stretching of the pixels, and it's a more accurate representation. But sometimes, you know, it's a tool that we have, so might as well use it, right? So this next shot, I did a little series on a piece of cutlery. So what I did is I took each individual food and I placed them on some cutlery, took the same kind of photo. A white piece of paper in the background. As you can see, there's still the sticker from the Dollarama sticker that's there. It's gonna come out later in post anyway, it's no big deal. I've got a black flag here that's creating a little bit of shadow and oomph on the fork over here. And this one here is a reflector that's actually adding a bit of light into here, which I'm going to use. If you look at the extra light that's in the shadows here in the actual product, I'm going to use that instead of this one, which is without the reflector. I think I still prefer the without the reflector for the shadow on the actual spoon or fork, but for the product, we're going to use the reflector. Next shot. So this one's similar to the shot with the white that we just did. Similar angle, same kind of story here. I am using, like, this is the main shot, and then I've got a reflector here, and I'm coming in and I'm painting a little bit of extra light on the logo and on what we're actually trying to look at. Quite like how this image turned out. I like the drama, I like the mood. So yeah, let's put them into Photoshop. Next, I did singles of each individual product as well. In a similar way, I knew I was going to be photoshopping out the background, but I want the background to be a similar color to the background in the photo to be a similar color to what I'll be photoshopping it out later to. What I'll be photoshopping it out to later. Yeah, I hope you guys got that. Because the background is purple and I knew I was going to make it purple-ish, or at least that was the closest color to what I was going to change it to. If you look behind the jar here, you're going to get some coloring of the actual paper that's behind there. So if you use a white paper or a yellow paper or whatever other color, it's going to show up here, which is just going to make your life a lot more difficult in Photoshop. So if you can do a little bit of shooting for the edit, knowing you're going to be editing it a certain way, you can shoot it in a certain way to be like, oh, this is going to help me later on. And that's kind of what I did here. Same with the kimchi. I was adding this black flag here to kind of create a little bit more drama in the glass. So if you look over here, this is without it, this is with it. So obviously huge difference, straight in camera, not even doing anything really. I'm just adding that. So that makes my life so much easier. Take care of those reflections. Same thing with the Daikon, just removing that the white marble that's showing up here. That's kind of like it's like a distracting reflection because it's kind of bright and we're not really sure what's going on. And those are the shots. So that's the capture one part. And I'm going to move into Photoshop now, and I'm going to show you a little bit more of the individual tweaks that we did for each of these shots. Well, how we started. So the background definitely did change. I didn't have the exact color that I wanted, but it was pretty damn close. It was good enough. So the first thing I did, remove that highlight on the side by using the second shot over here. We'll see how I did it. I actually don't remember. So, all right, so I changed the hue. So like that, I can kind of get a little bit more. I'm still getting that highlight through the glass in a similar color to what I want it to be. All right, so this one was mostly a lot of spot healing. So that's kind of just going through the glass and removing a lot of the little imperfections and hairs and whatever else that was there. Then I did a frequency separation layer, which I don't remember quite what I did. Also, if you'll notice, oh, okay, there we go. So I just made the reflections a little bit more perfect. And yeah, I did remove those reflections from the jar, which I think look better anyway. So it was just easier to do it with the frequency separation layer instead of doing it just as a regular spot healing. You'll notice I still have the Flern action for frequency separation. If you guys don't know Aaron Nace, aka AK Nacer on Twitter, I don't know if he's still doing a whole lot of stuff, but I learned so much from Aaron, and I owe the last 10 years of my career to this Photoshop action. So thank you for still being used in my career. It's still helping me out. So thank you, Aaron. Next up was, I think it was just the background. Okay, so I removed the halo. I think, oh, that's what it is. So I changed the halo for kind of like a side light. I'm just trying to make it a little bit more realistic looking and a little bit more, I mean, I'm playing with new things. You know, I'm just trying out different things and I'm seeing what I like, and I might have edited it a certain way, and then after I edited all 3 jars, I looked back at it, I'm like, let's try something different, and then I go back and I re-edit, and I think I ended up serving these shots to the client instead, so this ended up working out better for me in the long run. The last layer is usually just a sharpening layer. I am really bad at numbering my layers, so I apologize for that in advance, but that was the shot. The next one here, same thing, we just kind of layered all 3 of those logo, the sticker. I just added that extra shot for, to get a little bit more life in those, that was before, that was after. Very simple shot, again, just a little bit of a layer mask and painting on where I want the brighter shot to be. And combine a couple shots together, little spot healing here and there, remove some reflections on the glass, and boom, there we go, there's our shot. These shots are a lot more in camera than they are in Photoshop, so it's not as exciting to look at in post, but sometimes every now and then we'll do something fun. We'll do a nice little exciting, different type of shot, or we'll do something that takes a little bit more time, like the last 2 shots that we have. There's still like a limit to what we can do and what we can offer, and that's what I came up with. So, you know, whatever. Next time it'll be different. Here, the spoon. Original shot. This one looks a little bit more different in post, but honestly, it's not that much work. Again, just a little bit of selectioning, putting the highlight photo in the shadows of the bottom one, fixing the brand new, actually, yeah, these were brand new forks, and look at, like, that's how they came out. What is this? So, yeah, not really stoked on the fork after I looked at them too close, but they are pretty, so whatever, they looked okay. And yeah, there's the background swap, and there's our shot. Next is that remake of the other shot again. Similar thing, except this one I didn't remove any of those reflections. I kind of kept it more in its space. It made it look a little bit more like an actual end table or something that's, you know, like the jars are actually there. Same thing, you know, added a little bit of contrast, added a little bit of love, a little bit of brightness and vibrancy to the shot, but mostly just mixing in those different layers of the different shots, you know? Oh, that one's just a brightness for the background. Let's just remove all these here. We can go one at a time. Yeah, so there's their background. Then a little bit of spot healing. Oh, and it looks like all right, so sometimes I'll do some keystoning in Photoshop. There's always a little bit of bowing happening when you're not looking at an image in a certain way, so this helps kind of correct that perspective. Made them a little bit brighter, a little bit sharper, and that's probably just the last shot. It's just a duplicated layer. So there we go. There's our next shot. Now, finally, the last two shots, the ones that we were probably the most excited for. The first shot here, which was quite a bit different than the original image, which is like this. I mean, it was kind of long, but not exorbitantly long. The only reason this image took a while to edit was to use the pen tool to go around all the jars. Other than that, the shot is actually pretty simple. I was able to use Photoshop's generative AI to do this. So if I open up the prompt here, the background was all extended with generative AI. So I didn't do much, and I think this is the first or the third variation that it gave me. Like, I did 9 variations, and the first one they gave me is the one I used. It wasn't entirely sure what to do, but I think it did a pretty darn good job, considering that it doesn't have a whole lot to work with. I didn't tell it I wanted it to be the edge of a table like that, but it still gave it to me, and I was actually pretty excited with it. I just wanted it to expand the background and give me more of that texture, but it gave me kind of like an edge, and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna fight it. I kind of like it. And yeah, out of all of these different textures, I think this one looked the most realistic, or like the actual tile that was on there, so I just ran with it. And honestly, if you didn't know, you probably wouldn't look at it twice. So pretty happy with how that turned out. It was very simple, very easy. And then I went to the next thing, which was probably just spot healing, a little bit of brightening, or mixing a few of the layers together. So this was the shot with the scrim, and this was the shot without the scrim. So I just used that extra little bit of specular highlight on the tops just to kind of give us a little bit more life to the product. Next, change some of the hues, which was because I was changing some of the background, the colors on the background of the jar, because I know they're about to change. I made the logos a little bit brighter, sharper, or not sharper, but a little bit brighter and more punchy. Hue change, a little bit of a spot heal too, for some reason. And then the actual change of the background. So the background change was done with a pen tool, and I think I have it probably saved. If I go to select, layer, load selection, background, that's probably it. Yeah, there we go. So I went with the pen tool, went around all the jars, selected out my background, and now it makes it very, very, very easy to just swap it out and in a non-destructive way. If you can do this with your shot, then I mean your creativity is your own limits, because then after this you can do whatever you want. This part probably took like an hour or so, but everything else in every other shot probably took like 10 minutes. So nothing is very difficult. This is just a little bit more time consuming. But it worked out. It looks good. I think it's exactly what I wanted it to be, so that worked out. Next, a little bit of keystoning on the jars, making them a little bit more straight. Brought the shadow back from the first shot, which was a little bit more intense. I didn't want it to be too washed out. I still wanted that nice hard shadow. Made those logos a little bit brighter again. Sharpen. A little bit of noise just to give it on the background mostly, probably. Yeah, I don't even know if you guys can really see that, but there's just a little bit more texture on the background instead of it just being like a yellow color. And finally, if we go back to that last shot, the one with the jars, the one I'm most happy with, at least technically. So this is the actual main shot. And this is what it's probably going to look like if you just take this photo. But then when you start adding those flags, that's when we create this 3D, like the jar is actually, I can actually grab it now. It feels like it's real, even though it's on a screen. So it's not Photoshop magic, it's in-camera magic, but it's that you have to combine multiple shots together. If I had the 2 flags set up, I could do it in one shot, and then I have another shot of a background plate just to remove the flags. This time I did it in 3 because I had to like hold it on one side and then hold it on the other. But essentially it's a very simple shot. But once you start adding those extra little techniques there that make that jar really look real, that's when you can really stand out from the people around you, I think. So if we go through it again one by one, we're just gonna add, like, look at that. Look how much of that flag makes a difference on the entirety of the jar looks bigger, everything looks so much better. So I'm very happy with how these turned out. A little bit more spot healing, just kind of cleaning up the jars and stuff like that. And then a little bit of brightening and some sharpening. And there we go. There's our last shot. So I know this one was a little bit longer than usual. I kind of went through each individual shot like that, but I hope you guys liked it. Hope you got something out of it. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Later.